And I say that because one of the things in our culture that I think sticks out to many of us oftentimes is the reality that we're becoming a culture and a society that can be in the same room with one another but not be present with one another, right? I tend to be very quick to make fun of teenagers and young people who will all gather in a living room together and be sitting there, and then over a 10-minute span, not a word be said to each other, and then even beyond that, that they will just text each other while they're in the same room rather than have a conversation with each other in the same room. But I'm also reminded that us old fogies are not much different. Even just yesterday, I got a text message while I was playing a game with my son and my daughter, my youngest son and daughter. And it was a brand new game that my wife had just got for us. We had just got back from the camp out stuff. He's all excited to play and do all the things. And he's yelling, at me as I'm on this phone texting going, "Dad, watch this." And I go, as I'm texting, right? And then all of a sudden something happens, and then he just starts losing his mind, like, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "What is the matter with you?" Right? And then my daughter quickly responds to me, "Well, Dad, he asked you to watch him. You said yes. You did nothing, and now he's mad that you didn't see what's going on in the room." How quickly we can get our gaze and our mind and our hearts just completely focused on something and just miss what's going on around us, right? That we can say, like that's a common phrase answer now, isn't it? Or, "Yeah, sure, babe. Yeah, sure, son. Yeah, sure, daughter. Okay. And all the while, we're just doing this. I mean, I can remember specifically one time, it was when we were doing parking lot church. I made the joke as I was preaching one Sunday morning. I said, "Hey, look, I know you're in your car, so stop looking at your fantasy lineup for a minute and just listen to this." I had two different men go, "I was literally doing that very thing." That's why I say it's so easy to come in here and be on autopilot, right? There's a reason why these go off in the middle of services all the time, right? There's a reason why we're looking. I've had to learn while 90% of the time you're looking to see if I'm actually ever going to be on time as a pastor, right? There's another probably 30 to 40% it's you checking the message that just came through, or the update or the notification that just came through on your phone. And so let me ask, when we're doing that, are we present? Are we focused on what's going on in the room? Would you know if God walked in or not? Or would you be too wrapped up in what it is that you need to get to? The email that you forgot to send, the meeting that you forgot to put on your calendar, that Instagram notification that somebody liked that post that you put out there. Today, the passage that we're going to wrestle with kind of brings this to the forefront. Are we truly present? Are we really engaged? Are we truly mindful of what Jesus is doing, what the Holy Spirit is doing, what's going on in the spiritual realm around us? Or are we completely and utterly focused on this world alone, and has it completely blinded us? So today's sermon I've entitled, "Don't Be Blind." Don't be blind, and I believe that's what the passage is getting at us today. Normally I read the whole passage to you. Today we're going to take it bit by bit. And work our way through that way. I think it helps us today to be able to do it that way. And so if you have a Bible, you can turn to Luke chapter 18. We're back in the Gospel of Luke. And just a few reminders as you're turning there. Remember, the Gospel of Luke has a couple different little themes to it. One is, again, it's the gospel of Jesus setting his eyes to Jerusalem. And we're getting to that point of the gospel now. It's kind of weird to think we just got through with, Palm Sunday. We just got through with Easter, but we're getting ready to come back to that. We're about to come back to the triumphal entry. We're about to come back to the Passion Week and all the different things within the story. We're right on the cusp of that. And remember that since chapter 9, Jesus has been saying, "I am setting my eyes to Jerusalem." And that phrase has come up a few different times. We're going to Jerusalem. We're going to Jerusalem. So Luke's big point that he wants to drive home is that Jesus did not just come to hang out. He did not just come to be a teacher. He did not come to cause a revolution. He came and lived the life that he lived so that Friday would be good because Sunday would come. That's what he's here to do. And if you remember too, I still love this, is that in the ancient of days, if you go to especially like some of the old cathedrals in Europe, you'll see different stained glass windows with 4 pictures. And within those pictures, each gospel will have a different animal that is associated for that gospel. And the Gospel of Luke is associated by the ox. And if you remember, we talked about that early on, because the ox not only was strong enough to pull great weights and to move great things, but the ox was also an animal of sacrifice. In other words, the Gospel of Luke is constantly reminding us that Jesus is the only one who is able to carry the weight of our sin, right? And that's what it's focused on and getting us towards. So the first thing that we're going to see today is that we're going to see a people who are physically present but spiritually blind. They are physically present but spiritually blind. Look at verses 31 through 34 of chapter 18. And taking the 12, he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem." Here it is yet again. Jerusalem, Jerusalem. "And everything that is written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. For he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him, they will kill him. And on the 3rd day, he will rise." But they understood none of these things. This saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp what was said. Jesus is sitting here with his disciples. He's having one of those moments as they travel where they've probably had a great crowd. Now, they are literally moving toward Jerusalem. Now, remember, chapter 19 is where we begin that kind of triumphal entry area. So what does that mean? It means that every road throughout Israel would have been packed with humanity moving towards Jerusalem. Why? Because it's Passover. You are making the pilgrimage. It's time to get there. You got to get your hotel. You got to get with family before it becomes overcrowded. So everybody's on pilgrimage headed out, right? There's people all over the place. And so this is one of the reasons that we see Jesus being surrounded by these crowds the last couple of chapters for the stories that are in chronological order, because everybody's moving towards Jerusalem. But he has this moment where he pulls the 12 aside and goes, "Hey, just as a reminder," because remember, all the way back in chapter 9, Jesus has already told us this twice. And in verse 22 of chapter 9 and in verse 44, he already said, "I'm going to be handed over to the chief priests. I will be killed and I will rise." Like, this is not a new message. This is not some, wait, hold on. When? What? This happened well back, right? All the way through. And yet, it says that the disciples don't get it. Now, we can have some grace, right? It's easy for us to read the passage and go, how do they not get it? Well, because we already know that the grave is empty, right? We've seen the crucifixion. Like, we've seen it all play out. But there's also a little bit of not so much grace, because Jesus isn't speaking in some kind of weird revelation code here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to Jerusalem. What's going to happen? I'm going to be handed over to the Gentiles. They are going to torture me. They will kill me, but I will rise from the dead. I mean, there's not much in between news flash there, right? This isn't like, again, Revelation where it's going, okay, so look, the ox is going to Jerusalem, right? The such and such is going to bring the scepter of gold and then slash the blood of the ox, and the ox would and you're going, okay, who's the ox and what is he said, we are going. We're headed to Jerusalem. When we get there, I will be handed over to the Gentiles. They will treat me poorly. They will kill me. They will spit upon me. They will flog me, and I will die. But 3 days later, I will rise. There's not much in between. And they don't have a clue what he's saying. No clue. Now, the part that's tricky about the passage, right, is that within there it says this phrase at the very end there, verse 34, it says, "This saying was hidden from them." How is it hidden? That's like one of the biggest crux of this whole passage. How was it hidden? So let me give you a quick little, make myself seem really smart, but really I just read other people's work, okay? So hidden is what's called a passive participle. Pretty straightforward, right? Passive meaning something is happening to the disciples, right? If I slap you, that's passive. I'm the one active, you're taking it. I would not do that to West Crossing, but that's kind of how it works, okay? Passive is it's happening to you. It's not them per se. but it's happening to them. And so here comes the debate. Is God the one hiding from them? And if he is, why would he? Now here's the deal. I don't believe at all that God's hiding this from them. And let me tell you why, so we can get to the point of it. Number one, because Jesus is not speaking in code, right? This is as clear as it gets. He is as detailed as he can get about this. Also, I don't believe that this is God hiding it from them, because Jesus himself is God, right? Telling them these things. But he's repeating the exact same phraseology and the exact same words that he said in chapter 9, verse 22 and verse 44. So he's not saying kind of one way over here and another way over here where it's all these connect. It's like, look, I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to die. They're going to flog me. I'm going to die. But I will raise 3 days later. It's in chapter 9. He's saying it again here. So he's not mixing words around. He's being really straightforward. So that's one. Two is, it is a clear tie. It is clear, and he continues to tie what is going to happen to him to the scriptures. What did he say? He goes, everything that is about to happen to me took place through the prophets. Now let me ask you, if you had studied at all, let's just say Isaiah chapter 51 to 54, could you watch the crucifixion and think anything other than this is the servant, the Messiah? Like, if you've done any study at all in the Old Testament of what this Messiah is going to be, what he's going to do, what he's going to accomplish, the fact that in the Psalms we have a messianic psalm that talks about that not only would he be hung on a tree, but no bones would be broken. You fast forward into Greek times, into Roman times, when they would crucify people to guarantee their death. One of the things that they would do is take a club, slam it against their legs, snapping their legs so that they were guaranteed that they were suffocating to death to finish them off. Guess who they don't do that to? Jesus. I mean, we can go on down the list of thing after thing after thing. Like, if they had done any biblical study at all, and every time he says, this is what's going to happen, he always says, according to the prophets, according to the prophets, according to the prophets. Why? Well, it's because of the thing that we keep saying over and over. Why did the Pharisees not get who Jesus was? One, because he was always calling them out, which they just didn't like him. I don't like you. I don't want you to be the Messiah. Number two, it's because they had allowed their traditions and their interpretation to supersede what the teachings of scriptures were. I mean, we say it over and over again. They were so caught up in the political framework of Israel that they missed the spiritual framework of Israel. They were always so caught up. When are we going to have a king that will conquer Rome? And they lost sight of that the whole time what God was trying to conquer was death. Right? Even all the way back to the Passover. Was the Passover them conquering Pharaoh? Sure. But the reality was he conquered death. They put blood over their doorpost from the lamb as a sacrifice. So why? The angel of death would pass over them, not Pharaoh. The death would. It's been the story from the beginning. Why did Jacob go up the hill with Isaac? So at the top of that hill, when the sacrifice was needed, that God could make the statement, God will provide the lamb. And he does. And that no longer man has to die, but rather the lamb would die. Like, it's pretty clear. So he's telling them, get off your tradition. Get off of what grandma and grandpa told you that God is like. Get off of what they said and come back to the scriptures. Come back to what the Bible said. Come back to what the prophets told you and see that. The other reason I don't believe that this is God hiding it from them is we need to take a flash forward. I think we read this passage on Easter. So go back. If you've got a Bible, you can, or you can just follow on the screens. Luke 24, verses 30 through 32. Now, let me kind of set this up because I'm going to read you a snippet. I want to make sure I get it in context. Jesus has died. He is risen from the dead. The women have gone to the tomb. The angel literally has said to them, why are you looking for the living among the dead? They run back to tell the disciples, he ain't there. He's gone. He's out. He's risen. And they're all like, man, I don't really know. Like, you guys are saying, but y'all, you're women, you're emotional. You probably don't know what you're saying. You're running on low sleep, whatever. And now there's these disciples traveling. They come upon a man who is Jesus. And it says they cannot recognize him. Now watch what happens in verses 30 through 32. It It says, and when they sat at the table with them, or when he sat at the table with them, so Jesus is sitting with them, he took bread, he blessed and broke it, and he gave it to them. Verse 31, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. Now let's pause right there. Now this would, for those that would read this passage and go, see, Jesus was hiding his whole plan from them, and now he's going to show up and he's going to break bread and bless it so that he can open their eyes and they'll see it. But watch what happens in verse 32. They said to each other, did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road and while he opened to us the scriptures? Had nothing to do with God, because the Holy Spirit, the whole time that they're traveling with this Jesus, is telling them, do you not see that it's him? Do you not remember that he said he would rise in 3 days? Do you not remember that he told you time and time again he would die and he would rise? But it can't be. That's crazy. Like, that's insane talk. They're going to commit me if I say that I think this is Jesus sitting at this table with us. The Holy Spirit's revealing it to them the whole time, and they cannot see it. Like, they admit it here. The disciples are burning inside. The ones that were with him day and night for years, hearing him teach time and time again. You know that as they sat around campfires, as they traveled from one town to another town, that Jesus reciting these Old Testament prophecies. You know that every time in those 3 years that they went back to Jerusalem to do Yom Kippur and to do Passover, they would do the Psalms of Ascent. What were those? Here's who God is. We're rising to Jerusalem. We're rising into the presence of God. The one that will rescue, the one that will redeem. He will hold his covenant. Despite the fact that we've turned our back, he will allow us to rise. He will call us home. They're reciting this over and over and over again. And he keeps telling them, remember what the prophet said. Remember what the Old Testament, I will be pierced for your transgressions. Can't see it. They can't see it. So this is not God hiding it from them. It's them. It's Jesus constantly saying, I'm going to die, and them going, yeah. Okay, yeah. Chief priest, suffer, right? Yeah, gotcha, rise. Yeah. Okay, sure, Jesus, that's good. I like that a lot. Okay, so cool. So you're going to rise onto the throne and take over Rome. Love it. Right? Just like my son playing the game and me going, cool, all right. And him going, no. You didn't watch what I did. You're saying, yeah. You don't get it. You missed it, Dad. Are you physically present and spiritually blind? That's the question. This has nothing to do with God trying to hide anything from his people. It's him actually trying to kick the front door down so that you can see it. But you're caught up in this world so heavy that even though the Spirit is burning inside of you, you just can't get it. And it makes me wonder, like, how many Sundays do we come in here and as we break down the word, is it stirring in you? But you go, oh, that's crazy. Like, that's too much, Pastor. Oh, I mean, okay, yeah, I mean, like first century, that's cool stuff. But I mean, we're 2025 now. That's probably really cool over in the Middle East and in Israel. But I mean, this is the United States of America. It's a little different. It's not the same. And all the while, you know exactly what it is that God's calling you to and trying to teach you. By the way, just a little added note of another reason why I don't, and the shows how Greek can be, it's one of those things that's a tool that can make you dangerous rather than smart. It is a passive participle. But if you do a little bit more digging, it's also what's called in the middle voice. If you don't know what the middle voice is, it means that you are acting upon your own volition. See, I think those disciples grew up with the stories of there's a Messiah that's going to come, and he's going to get this Rome out of here. And we're going to have power again. And we're going to be the nation that everybody looks to again. We're going to be the power in the world that everybody goes, that's the nation that God's with again. And they could not see that God could care less about nations and borders and constitutions, but cared so much more about your eternity. And they're blind. Whereas, as we see Luke do so much, he's now going to give us the contrast. Remember a few chapters ago, we had the judge who hated God and people, right? But the woman kept begging and begging and begging, and finally the judge relented and gave in to her and gave her the deal. And the contrast was God is good, and he loves perfectly, and he loves mankind perfectly. If this awful judge would respond, then the God that is good will respond all the more, right? We're having the same kind of contrast here. So the second thing we see is now we're going to look at someone who is physically blind, but spiritually present. Physically blind, but spiritually present. Look at verses 35 through 42. As he drew near to Jericho, a blind man was sitting at the roadside begging. And hearing a crowd going by, he inquired, what this meant? They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. And he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And those who were in front rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and he commanded him to be brought to him. And when he came near, he asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And he said, Lord, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. So, okay, make sure that we see what's going on here. We don't know, it doesn't tell us, but my assumption is going to be that probably from a very young age, this man has been blind, probably from birth. And because of the way the ancient world worked, his whole existence has been to walk to the city gate, to put his pallet down, and to sit and to beg. That he would just have enough food or just enough money. And again, I know I've used this a lot, but this is that same person that you see at Penn Memorial every single week. Just begging that they would have enough, that they could be warm, have a meal, and go on with their lives. But on this particular day, in the midst of all the pilgrims coming, right, making their way through, there's a bigger commotion, and he knows it. You got to imagine as you're sitting there as a blind man, you kind of know when there's a larger group coming through, and you kind of probably get that kind of excitement of, all right, maybe just 2 people will give me an alms, right? Like maybe just a couple of people will drop a coin. If I can get 2 out of the 50 coming, it's a day, right? And then he goes, hey, what? Why is there such a crowd coming? Oh, Jesus of Nazareth is coming in. Notice what he does. He does 2 things that are really fascinating. One is he acknowledges who Jesus is perfectly. Twice he says, Son of David, which is what? It's acknowledging Jesus' kingship. And again, if you knew anything about the Old Testament prophets and what they taught, who is the Messiah going to come through? He's coming through the line of David. The king that would come over Israel would come from the line of David. He is acknowledging both his kingship and his messiahship by calling him the Son of David. Funny thing, which we continue to see this in the Gospel of Luke too, Jesus' entourage tells him to shut up. I think there's a warning in there for us, church, and I don't need to start sermon number 4 today, but how many people are we trying to silence that really are maybe crying out some things that are accurate? But nonetheless, finally Jesus says, no, bring the man to me. He's called him Son of David, and then as he's face to face with Jesus, he says, Lord. Not Savior, not healer, not miracle worker, not rabbi, Lord. And again, this is my own little through the years definition that I stumbled upon somewhere and I use all the time. When we are acknowledging someone as Lord over our life, it means this: the owner, the user, and or disposer of a thing. I want to say that again. It is the owner, therefore the user, and or disposer of a thing. Full ownership. I can use you however I want. I can dispose of you however I want. He calls him Lord. This is a guy that has not been traveling with Jesus. This is a guy that has not been with him day and night. This is the guy that hasn't been sitting around the campfire. This is a guy that all he's got is as he sat at that gate begging for money, just give me a little something. And as he has those eyes closed and he's not captivated by the world around him, and he just says, some help please, some help please, those ears tune into, did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth rose a little girl from the dead? Did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth fed them all with just a few fish and a few loaves of bread? Did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth walked on the waves? Did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth calmed the storms? Did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth put the Pharisees in their place and they had nothing to say? Did you hear that Jesus of Nazareth took the scroll of Isaiah, opened it up, and read it and said, there will be one who will proclaim freedom to the captive, and he will proclaim good news to all those that have need of it. And you have now have knowledge that this scroll has been fulfilled by the hearing of your ears. That's all he's got. And now as he's at the feet of Jesus and he says, what do you want from me? He says, Lord. Do you remember what Peter did to Jesus when he said that I'm going to die and be raised? The Gospel of Matthew. Y'all remember that? Hey guys, I'm going to die. I'm going to raise 3 days later. Peter, the Pope, however you want to deem Peter, didn't say Lord. He rebuked Jesus. He rebuked him. Matthew chapter 16. He's been with him. Peter's the one who saw Jesus walking on the water and said, Lord, if it's you, command me to come out with you. Peter is one of two people in the history of the world that walked on water. And what does he do when Jesus goes, here's the plan. I'm going to die and I'm going to raise. No, hold on, time out. We don't need to go to that audible. That's the wrong play. They're bringing the blitz, Lord. We got to attack. They're on the attack. We got to attack back. You got it wrong. And Jesus' response to Peter was, get behind me, Satan. Whereas the blind beggar who's never chased Jesus for a day in his life, all he's got is just a few little nuggets of stories that he's heard come through that gate. It says, Son of David, and Lord. And then here's the number two thing. He doesn't ask for a miracle. He doesn't ask for healing. He asks for what? Mercy. Listen to him. And he cried out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Those that were in front rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Not grace. Not display your power. Mercy. And let's get it straight. Remember, we try to do good with this. Grace is what? Receiving what you don't deserve. Every Christmas, if you open a present, you are receiving grace. You don't deserve that, but you're receiving it. Mercy, on the other hand, is when you do deserve something, generally punishment, and it is withheld. He is crying out to the Son of David and Lord, please don't give me what I do deserve. Now, yes, Jesus goes, what do you want? Which I love this too. And he gets to be completely honest. I want my sight. I'd like to have my sight. But here's the thing. Because of what he said prior, here's what he understands. He deserves to be blind. He deserves it. And I know I come back to this, but I'm sorry. It's got to be a core foundation for us, church. It has to be a core foundation that when we talk about the gospel, and we talk about Jesus' death on the cross, and we talk about the resurrection, that the depth of our rescue will determine the depth of our affection for Jesus. And if you do not come to Jesus at the starting point of you need mercy And instead, I'm sorry, but this is where our culture and our tradition gets in our way. We live in America, the land of dreams. If you're willing to work hard enough, you can have anything and everything that you want. In other words, we live in a world that we believe that we should get grace. We should just receive all the things that we don't deserve. We do not live in a world that believes, no, you don't understand. You don't want to get what you do deserve. See, we live like the Pharisees do. Do you see how good we are? See how smart we are? You see how educated we are? You see how many hours I worked this week? Did you see how many dates I took my wife on? Oh, I deserve some good stuff. Now, I mean, granted, I want a little more than what I deserve, but I should get something. Should get at least what I deserve. But the gospel constantly teaches, no, you don't understand. All that pride that you just spewed deserves death, and not just a small, quick over death, an eternity of it. It deserves an eternity of death. The beggar screams, physically blind, spiritually, completely full of sight. Have mercy. Have mercy on me, Lord. All right, I'm going to pick on the teenagers one more time. Kids, I want you to think about this too. Parents will get there a lot faster. This afternoon, what if we did an experiment? What if we went home and did experiments, brought our kids in the living room, and said, all right, kiddos, we're going to do something today as a bonding moment. We're going to spend the next 2 hours blindfolded. How long, parents, before your kid is going nuts? But let's go ahead, parents. How long before you're going nuts? What would we do without the ability to just do this? How much less would we go, yeah. If I walked in, or my spouse walked in and I said, how's your day? Would I notice the inflection in her voice that she's disappointed? Would I notice the inflection in her voice that she's sad, or that she's mad, or that she truly had something great happen that day and she just doesn't necessarily want to come up with and go, you seem a little more joyful today. What happened? Would I notice when my 4-year-old says, Dad, watch me? Would I notice not only is he trying to fill his time, but would I notice that he really wants his dad to see him? And that he wants his dad to acknowledge that he matters? Would I be able to worship in church differently if I wasn't caught up in looking around whether other people are raising their hands or not, standing or not? Would I pay more attention to my neighbor as they say hello as I'm walking in the house, and would I notice their inflection of voice and whether or not they're disappointed or in need or joyful? How much would your world change? How much more would you see, hear, and acknowledge the presence of God if you weren't so caught up in seeing your stuff and your shoes and your clothes and your Instagram and your Facebook and your Twitter, X, all the different things? What would it look like to come to the scriptures and just blindfold all the things that you want and all the things that you think are right and all the ways that you would rule the world, and you actually just came to it and said, Jesus is going to die and he's going to raise 3 days later. I get it. How much different would it be that if we come into the presence of God and like we saw with the rich young ruler, and he goes, hey, go sell everything, that we would go, okay, I don't need to have the car that my neighbor does because I need you. Church, we've got to find a way to make ourselves blind to this world and start tapping into a world that we can't physically see, but that when you truly tap in and start doing what the scriptures say, walking by the Spirit, that world that's spiritual becomes extremely clear. It becomes extremely noticeable. And all of a sudden you start doing things that this world would consider nuts. You start doing things that this world would consider ignorant. You start doing things that this world would say, why would you do that? Why would you put your time there? Why would you put your money there? Why are you using your talents there? Why are you having a conversation with that person? Why are you sitting down and going and doing? Why would you forgive them for that? And what we do is we put our blinders on and we hear the Spirit say, I'm forgiving this person for what they did because Jesus forgave me of all that I did. He showed me mercy. He showed me mercy. Last thing, though. Spiritual sight desires the presence of mercy. And I've intentionally put it there that way. Spiritual sight desires the presence of mercy. Look at verse 43. And immediately he recovered his sight, and listen, and followed him, glorifying God and all the people. And when they saw it, they gave praise to God. The depth of your rescue will determine the affection that you have for the Lord Jesus Christ. This blind man received so much mercy, he didn't want to be anywhere else. If I'm going to make it, because I know what I deserve, and I know what the Father knows about me, I got to be by him. Because if I'm not by the Son, I ain't getting in. Because it is only by the Son. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one's coming to the Father but by him. Church, mercy is not a moment. Mercy is not a prayer and it's done. Mercy is not just, hey, my bad, okay, we cool, great, and moving on. Mercy is being in the presence of the Son, because that's the thing. Death is not cancer. Death is not our days ending here. Death is out of the presence of God. And when you're out of the presence of God, you will not have mercy. You will have judgment. And with that means there is no pathway to grace. So the only place that you can be is there. This man receives his sight. Remember the lepers that got healed? They took off and wanted to go tell everybody. Only one stayed back, but here's the one. He gets his sight. And where does he go? Where are you going, God? Wherever you go, I'll go. I don't know about you, but if you've been blind your whole life, wouldn't you want to know what a sheep look like? Like, wouldn't you be running to a computer to Google Grand Canyon? Wouldn't you be looking up and going, clouds, blue sky? Not him. He fixes his gaze on Jesus and follows. Church, and again, I want to be clear about this. Today is not an attack on that our phones are the mark of the beast, okay? Today is not an attack on that if you own a smartphone that you're going to hell or anything like that. But it is a great illustration of how something can morph the way that we see the world around us so quickly and so easily, and can so easily distract us. The phone could just as easily be a little cash. Some of us, man, this is all we can see. I mean, all we're checking on that phone is the bank account. How much interest did I get today? How'd that 401k do today? How much did my car decline in value today? What's my return on investment this way? That's just as distracting. All some of us can see are the plaques that we have on our walls, the trophies that are on our shelves, the amount of people that want or don't want to date us, the image of our body, whatever it is. But the phone's a great reality of how much we will scroll through Facebook and all the different things, and we will allow all those voices to speak into us. And then all of a sudden when God says, no, this is my plan, this is how I want to work, we go, seem to have heard a lot of people say a different way. So when you say die, when you say spit on, when you say this, when you say you're going to rise from the dead, I get it. What you mean is we're going to be in a really big fight, but ultimately we're going to defeat them in 3 days. He's like, dude, this doesn't even have anything to do with Rome. This has everything to do with saying, hey, devil, you better start running because you're done. So here's the deal. Band's going to come, give you an opportunity to respond. The blind man knew he was blind. He knew who Jesus was. He cried out to Jesus, received mercy, and he followed him. How about you? How about you? Is there anybody here today that maybe you've never truly given your heart and life to Jesus before? And today would be that day that you would receive mercy. Receive mercy. That you would not get what you deserve. But because you receive mercy, that you would follow him all the days of your life. Maybe there's some of us here that are just like the disciples. We're here every Sunday. Heck, some of you are here every Sunday, every Wednesday that we have Wednesday night stuff. You're here when we do Hope House Bible studies, and you're over there doing that. You're around when we do second hour. You're around when we do the fellowship thing. You slept in your tent all night through the rain, and you did all the things. But the reality is you're absolutely blind to what it is that God's wanting you to do. You're blind to the call he's put on your life. And even though he's looking directly at you and going, this is exactly what I need you to do, you're going, cool, sure, yeah, cool, babe. In either camp, would you turn towards the Lord?